For many years, the samurai were at the heart of Japan. They weren't just fighters, they were artists, poets, and leaders who shaped Japan's future. Their story is full of bravery, discipline, and loyalty. Samurai, with their special armor and swords, are famous around the world, but there's a long and interesting history behind the stories. This video explores the world of the samurai, from their beginnings to their way of life and what caused their downfall. Travel back in time with us to understand these legendary warriors and how they shaped Japan. The samurai didn't appear overnight. Their emergence was a gradual process influenced by various social, political, and economic factors. They started to become a distinct group around the late 700s, during a time when Japan was undergoing significant changes. Back then, Japan's central government was getting weaker, struggling to maintain control over distant provinces. Local landowners, known as daimyo, needed protection from robbers and rival clans. To safeguard their lands and maintain order, they hired strong and loyal warriors. These warriors were initially called samurai, which means those who serve. They were dedicated to serving their lords with unwavering loyalty. Over time, the term samurai evolved into samurai, a name that would become synonymous with honor, discipline, and martial prowess. Early samurai were highly skilled in horseback riding and archery. These skills were essential for their roles as warriors, allowing them to be effective in battle. In return for their service, samurai were often rewarded with land or food by their lords. This system of rewards helped to ensure their loyalty and dedication. Their main job was to protect their lord's land and make sure people followed his rules. They acted as both protectors and enforcers, maintaining peace and order in their territories. As Japan went through periods of turmoil and conflict, the samurai became more and more important. Their role expanded beyond mere protectors to influential figures in society. Over the centuries, the samurai became very powerful and changed Japan's history for hundreds of years. Their influence can still be felt in modern Japanese culture, where the values of honor, discipline, and loyalty continue to be revered. Becoming a samurai was hard work that started young. Boys from samurai families trained their bodies and minds. They learned to use swords, shoot arrows, ride horses, and fight hand to hand. They had to be strong, quick, and disciplined. Samurai also learned calligraphy, literature, and history. They were supposed to be smart and polite, following the rules of Bushido. Bushido, the way of the warrior, was the samurai code. It was all about honor, loyalty, bravery, self-control, and being ready to die for their lord. Bushido guided samurai in everything they did. Samurai were important people in Japan. They protected the land and made sure people followed their lord's rules. They were a big part of how society worked. They got land and money for their military service and loyalty. When there was a war, samurai fought bravely for their lord. They fought on foot and horseback, using clever plans to be fast, skilled, and organized. During peacetime, samurai helped their lords run things. They managed land, collected taxes, and kept things peaceful. This gave them a lot of power and respect. The late 1400s started a time of constant fighting, upheaval, and transformation in Japan. This era, known as the Sengoku period, was marked by relentless warfare and significant social changes. It was a time when the country was divided into numerous warring states, each ruled by powerful feudal lords known as daimyo. These daimyo were ambitious and sought to expand their territories and influence. The daimyo commanded large armies of samurai, who were the warrior class of Japan. These samurai were highly skilled in martial arts and adhered to a strict code of honor known as Bushido. The constant battles between rival daimyo led to the development of new military strategies and tactics. Samurai armies became more disciplined and organized, and the scale of warfare grew larger and more complex. The Sengoku period also had a profound impact on the daily lives of the samurai. They had to adapt to the changing nature of warfare, which included the introduction of new weapons and fighting techniques. Battles became more frequent and intense, requiring samurai to be constantly prepared for combat. This period of continuous conflict tested their skills and resilience. As the scale of warfare increased, so did the need for better organization and coordination among the troops. Samurai leaders had to develop new strategies to manage their forces effectively. The introduction of new weapons, such as the longbow and the spear, required samurai to learn new combat techniques. They also had to adapt to the use of firearms, which were introduced by European traders in the mid-1500s. The arrival of European firearms revolutionized Japanese warfare. Samurai had to incorporate these new weapons into their traditional fighting methods, which changed the dynamics of battle significantly. The use of firearms required new training and tactics, and it altered the way samurai engaged in combat. This period of adaptation was crucial for their survival in the ever-changing landscape of Sengoku Japan. The relentless fighting and the introduction of new technologies during the Sengoku period had a lasting impact on the samurai. It transformed their way of life and their role in Japanese society. Ultimately, the constant warfare and the changes it brought about led to the decline of the samurai class. The Sengoku period marked the beginning of the end for the traditional samurai as Japan moved towards a more unified and modern state. The fighting of the Sengoku period ended when three powerful leaders came to power: Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. They were smart and strong, and they united all of Japan under one government. Tokugawa Ieyasu started a time of peace. Because there were no more big wars, the samurai's job changed. They weren't just warriors anymore. Many became administrators and officials in the new government. They worked in offices, managed things, and became scholars, serving their daimyo during peacetime. The Tokugawa shogunate brought peace, but it also led to the end of the samurai. The Tokugawa period, which lasted from 1603 to 1868, was a time of relative peace and stability in Japan. The shogunate established a rigid social order, with the samurai at the top, followed by farmers, artisans, and merchants. This hierarchy was strictly enforced, and the samurai were expected to live by a strict code of conduct known as Bushido, or the way of the warrior. Society was very strict, with samurai at the top. They were the warrior class, and their primary role was to serve their lords and protect the land. However, during the long period of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate, the need for warriors diminished. Many samurai found themselves without battles to fight and turned to administrative roles or other forms of employment. This made people in the lower classes angry. The rigid social structure meant that those in the lower classes, such as peasants and merchants, had little opportunity to improve their social standing. This led to growing resentment and social unrest. Peasants, who made up the majority of the population, were heavily taxed and often lived in poverty, while the samurai, who were supposed to protect them, lived relatively comfortable lives. Also, merchants became richer during the peacetime. Despite being at the bottom of the social hierarchy, merchants thrived during the Tokugawa period. The prolonged peace allowed commerce to flourish, and many merchants accumulated significant wealth. This economic power began to challenge the traditional social order, as merchants could afford to lend money to the samurai and even to the shogunate itself. Even though they were officially lower than samurai, they had money and power. The growing influence of merchants created a paradox in the social structure. While samurai were supposed to be the elite class, many found themselves indebted to wealthy merchants. This shift in power dynamics further eroded the prestige and authority of the samurai class. This made the samurai less important. As the economic power of merchants grew, the samurai's role in society continued to diminish. Many samurai struggled to maintain their status and lifestyle, leading to a decline in their influence and importance. The once revered warrior class was now facing an identity crisis, as their traditional roles and values were increasingly seen as outdated. Then Western countries came to Japan and forced it to trade with them. The arrival of Commodore Perry and his black ships in 1853 marked the beginning of the end for the Tokugawa shogunate. The forced opening of Japan to Western trade exposed the country to new ideas, technologies, and ways of life. This external pressure highlighted the weaknesses of the shogunate and accelerated the push for modernization. This changed Japanese society a lot. The influx of Western influence brought about significant changes in Japanese society. Traditional customs and practices were challenged, and there was a growing desire to adopt Western technology and institutions. This period of rapid transformation created a sense of urgency among the Japanese leadership to modernize the country and catch up with the Western powers. In 1868, the Meiji Restoration happened. The Meiji Restoration marked the end of the Tokugawa shogunate and the restoration of imperial rule under Emperor Meiji. This was a turning point in Japanese history, as the new government embarked on a series of reforms aimed at modernizing the country. The samurai class, which had been the backbone of the shogunate, found itself increasingly marginalized in the new order. The new government wanted to modernize Japan and create a new army. One of the key reforms of the Meiji government was the establishment of a modern conscripted army. This new military force was based on Western models and required the participation of all able-bodied men, regardless of social class. This move effectively ended the samurai's monopoly on military power and further diminished their status. The samurai class ended in 1876. In 1876, the government officially abolished the samurai class, stripping them of their traditional privileges and stipends. Samurai were encouraged to find new forms of employment and to adopt Western clothing and customs. This marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in Japanese history. They lost their special status and the money they used to get. The loss of their special status and financial support was a significant blow to many samurai. They had to adapt to a rapidly changing society and find new ways to support themselves and their families. This transition was difficult for many as they struggled to reconcile their traditional values with the demands of modern life. Many samurai had a hard time because they lost their jobs and their place in society. The end of the samurai class left many former warriors in a state of uncertainty. Some were able to transition to new roles in the government, business, or education, while others faced significant hardship. The fall of the samurai marked the end of a significant chapter in Japanese history, but it also paved the way for the modernization and transformation of the country. Even though the samurai are gone, they left a big mark on Japan. Their ideas of honor, loyalty, and discipline are still important today. The Bushido Code, though not followed exactly anymore, shaped Japanese martial arts like Kendo and Aikido. These martial arts teach self-control, discipline, and respect, just like the samurai. You can also see the samurai in Japanese art, writing, and movies. From old samurai movies to new anime and manga, the samurai are still popular. The samurai story, from local warriors to powerful nobles and then their decline, shows how things always change. The time of the samurai is over, but they are still remembered in Japan and around the world. Their stories teach us about courage, discipline, and always following your beliefs. The samurai may be gone, but their strong spirit lives on in people who value honor and try their best in everything they do.